This is a video response to Jesuriah, his clarifications and challenges video. I decided to make this video response because I feel like all the comments that I left, which were a lot, got lost in a debate between Face of God and I think Catalyst. So I feel like my comments got lost and they were unchecked, so I just wanted to make a video response so you can see and you can hear what I have to say in response to that video. I wrote it down, so I'm going to be reading from it. I start off saying, hey, I'm flattered to be mentioned specifically on here, so I thank you for that. And I also want to let you know that I'm thankful that you're thankful that I am at least mild-mannered. I try to keep a decent debate, and I don't like to be disrespectful. Unfortunately, you're quite wrong about suicide terrorism. It is not because of our culture. As you may remember, former presidential candidate Ron Paul brought this issue to light when he talked about blowback, a term that the CIA uses as unintended consequences of U.S. government meddling in other people's affairs and other foreign affairs. An example of this would be the hostage situation in the U.S. Embassy in the 70s, I think it was, over in Iran. It was a response to, in the 50s, when the U.S. government and the British government overthrew the Shah. Unfortunately, Dawkins is a bit uninformed in this subject. Robert Pape wrote a book called Dying to Win. In it, he documents, or he examines all the documented suicide terrorist, not attempts, but all the suicide terrorism events. And in it, he concludes that all the modern ones are due because of political reasons. And occupational reasons. For instance, the Tamil Tigers used suicide terrorism because of the Sri Lankan government. Osama bin Laden didn't do anything that was different. The only difference was that it was the U.S. government which is on their Holy Land. And now before you jump the gun and say, aha, Holy Land gives a religious justification to what they do, this is simply untrue. It's the U.S. government's stubbornness to not apologize and to keep meddling in foreign affairs. That is what angers Osama bin Laden. Richard Dawkins failed to do the correct thing, which was actually quote Osama bin Laden himself. Instead, he quotes many secondary sources and analysis and experts, yet he failed to quote Osama bin Laden. I welcome you to read what he says in my next comment, because it's far too long for the rest of this, and obviously I have to read it. It's on page 119 of the book. And he says, the call to wage war against America was made because America has spearheaded the crusade against the Islamic nation, sending tens of thousands of troops to its land of the two holy mosques, which is Saudi Arabia. Over and above its meddling in its affairs and its politics, and its support of the oppressive, corrupt, tyrannical regime that is in control. These are the reasons behind the singling out of America as a target. I really want to reiterate the fact that because he mentions holy mosques, this does not mean it is a religious justification. Can you imagine if somebody came into your house and started living there and started trying to run things? Be honest, you wouldn't say, in the name of atheism, get the hell out of my house and go die. You wouldn't do it for your e-religion, since you're not religious. Don't be fooled by Dawkins or by George Bush. The 9/11 attacks had nothing to do with our culture. In fact, before the attack, some of the devout Muslims were seen gambling and drinking and eating pork, which is strictly prohibited by Islam. The 9/11 attacks had everything to do with political, not social, not religious, but 100% political purposes of the U.S. government. As for the Old Testament, while I do not doubt that God has laid down the judgment smack down, I also must remind you that the Old Testament is a narrative of how things were in the older days, not all of what God wanted it to be. Do not misunderstand me. God did lay down his laws, but keep in mind that the Old Testament is also a narrative story. Furthermore, when God would tell Moses to go to war, I believe it is a fair justification if your Creator tells you that you have a choice to stay and die or to go and live. If you stay and die, then it is justifiable. I do not agree with the invasion of Iraq, but it is only common sense. If you're going to fight a much bigger army, then you are going to die. This is mere common sense. I do not know what the reasoning was for God to tell Moses to do what Moses did. However, I can honestly say that if God tells somebody to leave, then the smart thing to do is to obey God. Otherwise, you're most likely going to either die, get punished, or hurt in some way. That's bound to happen with or without a war. Goodness. I would also like to note that in the Bible it says, anyone under the age of understanding, or not necessarily the age, but the mental capacity to know what's good and bad will go to heaven automatically. One more point I would like to make: since you are an atheist, I think it's a fair assumption to make that you do not believe that the Bible is true. In saying that, why are the narratives of the Bible anything but minuscule to you? Obviously you don't believe what happened, so then why worry about all the bad things that the Bible says in the stories? I understand, yes, for recent events that you know happened, to see if the Bible was used as a justification to do bad things. But if the narratives in the Bible of the wars and whatnot should not matter to you. I would like to point out many things that you're pointing out are just disagreements with, which is moral things, which you find moral and immoral, and a very angry God. Why do you forget to mention some of the good things about God's laws? Perhaps repaying somebody back for when somebody else damages a neighbor's property. There are many examples of justified laws in the Bible. Why are you so quick to pick out the ones that seem the worst? What do you get mad if somebody felt obligated because the Bible said that he should pay you back for the window he broke while playing baseball? I don't think you'd say, "Oh, you stupid immoral Christian, I hate God's laws." I think you would thank him and find him as a very fair person, just as I would. Moving on, I do not doubt for 1 second that religion was used as justification to do very many bad things. I do not doubt for a second, but innocent things are often used to justify bad things. Does this mean we should do away with them? When a murderer claims that the TV was the reason he is so violent and angry, should we do away with the TV? Or should we hold him accountable for his own actions? Which seems more justifiable to you? Which is a better thing to judge him about? Is it to say that it's the TV's fault, or is it to say that he is responsible for his own actions? If a rapist justifies raping a woman because she is wearing revealing clothes, do we blame the woman for the revealing clothes, the sex drive of the rapist, or do we hold him accountable for his own actions? It is unfair on all accounts to blame religion for somebody's personal decision. Christians are given free will by God, so when a Christian chooses to do something, it is not God's fault, nor is it religion's fault, because it's a justification. It's the individual's fault. This is why I reject the argument put forth by so many Christians that say atheists are responsible for mass murdering too. I reject that because I judge individuals. I don't judge groups. It reminds me of a good song by a band called H2O called Guilty by Association. The lyrics are pretty plain and simple. Guilty by association, judged by who I know. I ask you for the respect enough for yourself, for your fellow atheists, and to your religious friends. Do not preach that we should judge a whole religion based on bad people, but we should judge people based on themselves. We should judge people, period, not groups. I think this can be agreed on everybody, even the rare open-minded Christians. I look forward to a response, and I hope I answered some questions that you may have had.